Rows of executives in their expensive suits sat around the long mahogany table, their eyes fixed on me. The overhead lights buzzed, casting a harsh glare over the scene. But nothing was as harsh as the smirk on Daniel Cross's face. Daniel, the CEO of Crosstech Enterprises, leaned back in his chair, arrogance oozing from every inch of his perfectly tailored suit. "Emma," he said, drawing out my name like it amused him. "Do you really think you have what it takes to run a business?" The room tensed. I could feel the judgment, the quiet snickers barely concealed behind lowered gazes. I forced my voice to remain steady. "I believe my proposal speaks for itself, Mr. Cross." His smirk deepened. "Oh, does it? Let me tell you something." He stood up, walking toward me with slow, deliberate steps. He circled me like a predator toying with prey. "You're useless, Emma. You don't have the skills, the brains, or the vision to lead." My fingers curled into my palm, nails pressing into my skin. "Frankly, I don't even know why I hired you," he added, his voice filled with faux pity. "Maybe I just needed someone to make the coffee." Laughter rippled through the room. Not everyone joined in, but enough to make my humiliation complete. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay silent, because Daniel had no idea what I had done. By this time tomorrow, he wouldn't be smirking. By this time tomorrow, he would be the one fighting to breathe in this very room. Because what he didn't know was that I had already bought out the majority shares. I walked out of that boardroom with my head held high, but inside, my heart thundered with rage. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stepped into the elevator, the cool metal walls reflecting the fury simmering in my eyes. Daniel thought he had broken me. He thought I was nothing more than a disposable employee. He had no idea I had spent months orchestrating his downfall. I had spent years enduring his cruelty, watching as he crushed anyone who dared to challenge him, as he humiliated employees for sport. But instead of letting him destroy me, I worked in silence. I built connections, formed alliances, studied the company's weaknesses. And then, when the opportunity came, I struck. A silent, unseen takeover. I acquired 52% of the shares through carefully orchestrated deals. I was now the majority shareholder. Tomorrow, Crosstech Enterprises would have a new CEO. And Daniel? He was about to lose everything. The following morning, I walked into the building not as an employee but as the owner. The air inside felt different. The whispers followed me the moment I stepped in, eyes darting toward me in hushed confusion. I could feel the tension crackling in the air as I strode toward the executive wing. Inside the boardroom, Daniel sat at the head of the table, utterly unaware of the storm about to hit him. He barely glanced up. "What the hell are you doing here?" I slid a document across the table toward him. "Read it," I said, my voice cool, controlled. Frowning, he flipped the first page. His smirk faltered. His eyes darted over the text, widening with every word. A deep, eerie silence fell over the room. Then, in a hoarse whisper, he asked, "What is this?" I leaned forward. "It means I own this company now." The color drained from his face. And that was the moment I had been waiting for. Daniel's hands trembled as he read the fine print, scanning it over and over as if expecting the words to change. His breathing grew uneven. He looked up at me, and for the first time in his life, he had no words. The mighty Daniel Cross was speechless. "No, this isn't real," he whispered. "It's very real," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I now own 52% of Crosstech, which means your time as CEO is officially over." His face contorted with disbelief. "You can't." "I can." I cut him off. And I did. The board members exchanged nervous glances. Some of them looked relieved. Others, wary. They had spent years under Daniel's reign of terror. And now, that reign was over. The man who had mocked me in front of everyone, the man who said I was useless, was now powerless. The silence stretched between us, heavy, suffocating. Then, panic set in. "Wait," Daniel stammered. "Emma, we can talk about this. You don't have to do this." I let out a slow breath, tilting my head. Talk about what? You had plenty of time to talk when you were humiliating me in front of the entire company. His jaw clenched. That was just business. No, Daniel, I interrupted, my voice turning ice cold. This is business. Daniel stood abruptly, slamming his hands against the table. I built this company. You think you can run it without me? A small, satisfied smile played on my lips. Watch me. The doors opened. Security guards stepped in. His face twisted with rage. You're kicking me out? No, Daniel. The company is kicking you out. The security guard stepped forward. He thrashed, his face red with fury. You can't do this. But they could. And they did. I watched as Daniel Cross, the once untouchable CEO, was escorted out like a common criminal. And when he turned back one last time, his eyes filled with hatred, I simply smiled. Goodbye, Daniel. And with that, the door shut behind him. As the door slammed shut behind Daniel, the silence in the boardroom was deafening. No one dared to move, their faces frozen in disbelief. Some looked uneasy, others relieved, but all of them were shaken. The man they had feared for years, the one who had ruled with an iron grip, humiliating employees, making people cry, firing them without a second thought, was gone. And I, the woman he had belittled, had taken his place. I let the silence stretch, letting every person in that room fully absorb what had just happened. Then finally I stood up. Let's get something straight, I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. This company is going to change. There will be no more abuse, no more fear, no more toxic leadership. From this moment forward, CrossTech will not be a place where people are treated like dirt. A few executives exchanged glances, as if unsure whether to believe me. But others, the ones who had suffered under Daniel's rule, had a spark of hope in their eyes. I turned to the HR director, a woman who had been forced to enforce Daniel's ruthless policies for years. First order of business. Any employee that was fired unfairly under Daniel's leadership, we reevaluate their termination. If they were let go unjustly, they get their jobs back, effective immediately. The HR director blinked in shock, then nodded quickly. One of the board members, a man named Richard who had always been one of Daniel's lackeys, cleared his throat. Emma, you have to understand, Daniel's methods may have been harsh, but he made this company profitable. If we suddenly start changing policies. I turned my gaze on him, my eyes cold and unyielding. Are you trying to tell me that abusing employees was necessary for profits? Richard faltered. I'm just saying we should be careful with drastic changes. I took a step closer to him, lowering my voice. The only drastic change happening here is that people will be treated like human beings. If you have a problem with that, Richard, I suggest you step down. His face paled. He knew he no longer had Daniel to protect him. I understand, he muttered, looking away. Satisfied, I straightened. Good. Meeting adjourned. As the board members filed out, I could already feel the shift in power. Some would resist, but most of them, they would fall in line. I wasn't just here to replace Daniel. I was here to rewrite the future of this company. As I walked out of the boardroom, I could feel dozens of eyes watching me. The news had already spread like wildfire. Did you hear? She's the new CEO. She took Daniel down just like that? Maybe things will finally change around here. A group of employees gathered near the break room, whispering. The moment they saw me, they fell silent. I stopped. Is there something you'd like to ask me? They hesitated. Then one of them, a woman in her early 30s, her ID badge reading Sophia Reynolds, spoke up. Is it true? Daniel is gone. I nodded. Yes. He won't be coming back. A few gasps. A few exchanged glances. Then, something I didn't expect. One of the employees, a young man, actually wiped his eyes. Sorry, he stammered, looking embarrassed. It's just, Daniel ruined my life. He cut my salary in half because I took a week off to care for my sick mom. I had no choice but to keep working, even though we could barely afford her medication. A surge of anger tightened my chest. This was exactly why I had done this. What's your name? I asked. He swallowed. Ethan. Ethan Myers. I turned to the HR director, who had followed me out. Ethan's salary? Restore it to what it was. And compensate him for the losses he suffered under Daniel's leadership. The HR director's eyes widened, but she nodded. Ethan's face crumpled in disbelief. You're serious? I met his gaze firmly. Yes. And if you ever need time off for your family, you take it. No one should have to choose between their job and their loved ones. He exhaled sharply, his voice breaking. Thank you. I smiled. You're welcome. Now go do great work. And just like that, I saw the walls of fear begin to crumble. Daniel had built this company on cruelty. I would rebuild it on integrity. By lunchtime, the media had already caught wind of the takeover. Breaking news, Crosstech's ruthless CEO ousted in shocking takeover. Insider report, former employee Emma Carter revealed as new CEO. How did she pull it off? I sat in my new office, watching as the headlines flooded in. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, investors, and even former colleagues. Some congratulating me, some trying to figure out how I had orchestrated everything so perfectly. But I ignored all of them, because I had only one thing on my mind: Daniel Cross. I expected Daniel to lash out publicly, to deny what had happened, to try and spin a story that made him look like the victim. But he didn't, because his world was collapsing. Over the next few days, it became clear just how much of a mess he had left behind. Unpaid invoices, shady backdoor deals, employees he had mistreated filing lawsuits. It was all unraveling at once. I wasn't the one who ruined him. He ruined himself. Daniel Cross was a man who thrived on power. His entire identity revolved around being the CEO, the one in control, the one who dictated people's lives with a snap of his fingers. But now he had nothing. For the first 3 days after his removal, he remained eerily silent. No emails, no calls, no press statements. But I knew it was only a matter of time before he snapped. And on the 4th day, he did. It started with an emergency meeting request, one that he wasn't invited to. The board forwarded the email to me, along with a note. Daniel is demanding a private sit-down with you. He says it's urgent. I smirked. Of course, it was urgent to him. I replied with 2 words: declined. Within an hour, my secretary informed me that Daniel had barged into the building. Security was already on high alert, but before they could remove him, I made a decision. Let him in, I said, crossing my legs as I leaned back in my chair. This was going to be fun. The door slammed open. Daniel stormed inside, his face twisted with fury, his perfect composure shattered. His expensive suit was slightly disheveled, as if he had thrown it on in a rush. His jaw was clenched, so tight I swore his teeth would crack. You have some nerve, he spat, his hands slamming against my desk. I tilted my head, pretending to consider his words. I do, don't I? His nostrils flared. This is my company. I built this from the ground up. And you think you can just walk in here and take everything? I laced my fingers together, my expression calm. I didn't walk in and take anything, Daniel. I worked for it. I played the long game. I outsmarted you. That's business. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. You think you're some genius? You're nothing but a fraud. A thief. At that, my expression turned ice cold. Oh, really? A thief. I stood up, leaning forward until we were eye to eye. Tell me, Daniel, who stole years of employees' lives by underpaying them? Who stole dignity from the people you humiliated? Who stole futures from those you fired for personal amusement? His jaw tightened, but I didn't stop. Every single unethical deal you made, every corrupt practice, every abuse of power, I know about them all. I have the files, the documents, the emails. I could have exposed you to the world, but instead, I took the legal way out. I paused, then smirked. But if you'd rather I leak everything to the press, I'd be happy to reconsider. His eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before. Fear. A bead of sweat formed on his brow. He knew I wasn't bluffing. You, he exhaled, his voice lower now, almost desperate. You don't have to do this, Emma. Oh, now he wanted to negotiate? I crossed my arms. What exactly do you think I'm doing? He inhaled sharply. We can work something out. A partnership. I almost laughed. You want a partnership? After calling me useless? After telling me I should just make coffee? He swallowed hard. I was wrong, okay? I see that now. You're obviously capable, but you don't know everything about running a company. I can still help. There it was. The desperation. Daniel Cross, the man who never apologized, who thought himself untouchable, was begging for a chance to stay relevant. And I was going to enjoy every moment of his downfall. I let the silence stretch. Let him sweat. Let the weight of his own please settle in. Then I spoke. No. His expression flickered. First confusion, then rage. You're making a mistake. I walked around my desk, circling him the way he had once circled me in that boardroom. The mistake was underestimating me. The mistake was thinking I was some helpless girl who would just accept whatever scraps you threw my way. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I don't need you, Daniel. I never did. He clenched his fists. You think you can run this place without me? I smiled. I know I can. His breath hitched. He stared at me for a long moment, then exhaled shakily. For the first time in his life, Daniel Cross was powerless. He had lost, and he knew it. After that confrontation, Daniel's downfall accelerated. Investors who had blindly supported him suddenly pulled out. Former employees he had wronged began coming forward with testimonies. Lawsuits that had been silenced under his leadership resurfaced. One by one, his old allies abandoned him, desperate to distance themselves from the wreckage. Within a week, the man who once owned this company was reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale in the corporate world. And I was just getting started. The first thing I did as CEO was undo Daniel's damage. I personally met with department heads, restructured unfair policies, and implemented ethical business practices. Salaries were adjusted, abused employees were rehired, and the toxic culture Daniel had built, I burned it to the ground. Crosstech wasn't just about profits anymore. It was about people. And the employees? For the first time in years, they felt safe. Of course, not everyone wanted to see me succeed. Some media outlets tried to paint me as the villain, the ruthless woman who stole Crosstech. But I didn't flinch. I held press conferences. I told the truth. And when employees stood behind me, sharing their own stories of Daniel's abuse, the media had no choice but to change the narrative. I wasn't the villain. I was the savior. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I spotted him standing across the street. Daniel. His expensive suit was gone. His face was unshaven, his hair unkempt. He looked lost. For a moment, our eyes met. And for the first time, he didn't glare at me with hatred. He just looked tired. And despite everything, I felt no satisfaction in his suffering. Because the truth was, I had already won. Against my better judgment, I approached him. Daniel, I said quietly. He stiffened, like he expected me to humiliate him. But I didn't. I reached into my bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to him. What's this? He asked, his voice hoarse. A job offer, I said simply. His head snapped up. His eyes widened. You won't be in charge, I clarified. But if you want to rebuild your life, I'm giving you one chance. Take it or leave it. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then slowly, he took the paper. And for the first time in our lives, Daniel Cross whispered two words I never thought I'd hear from him. Thank you. The night air was crisp as I stood in my office, staring out at the city skyline. The glow of the buildings reflected in the glass, a reminder of how far I had come. This office, this company, once belonged to Daniel Cross. Now it was mine. But more importantly, I hadn't just taken revenge. I had rebuilt something that had been broken for years. The Crosstech Enterprises was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of innovation, respect, and fairness. Employees who once dreaded coming to work now felt valued. Departments that were once chaotic now thrived under new leadership. And Daniel? I had given him a chance. Whether he took it or not was his decision. I turned away from the window, exhaling slowly. There was no bitterness left inside me. No lingering rage. Only clarity. I had fought, struggled, and won. Not just against Daniel, but against the doubts, the fears, the voices that told me I wasn't good enough. And now, I was standing at the top, not as a victim, not as a pawn in someone else's game, but as a leader, and I earned every damn bit of it. As I locked my office door and stepped into the elevator, I thought about what was next. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. The door slid open to the lobby, and I saw employees still working late, chatting over coffee, smiling as they discussed new ideas. The energy in the office was different now, hopeful, alive. Sophia, the employee who had questioned me on my first day as CEO, waved at me from the front desk. Heading home, Miss Carter? I smiled.
Yeah.
But I'll be back tomorrow.
She grinned.
We're glad to have you here. Those words, they meant everything. Because I didn't just take over a company. I had created a legacy. And as I walked out of the building into the cool night air, I knew one thing for certain. Daniel Cross had underestimated me. The world had underestimated me. But in the end, I had won. And I had done